Today we're going to work with the square root. The square root is going to be associated with squaring. It's actually the reverse operation of squaring. So, for the last lesson we talked about squaring a little bit. Here's a little bit more detailed list of some squaring. 1 squared, as you remember, just means 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared, again, remember, is 3 times 3, which is not 6, but 9. 4 squared, again, that's not 8. 4 times 4 is actually 16. So watch out there on those. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. 7 squared, well, 7 times 7 is actually 49. 8 squared, 64. 9 squared, 81. 10 squared, 100. 11 squared, 121. 12 squared, 144. These numbers, and there's a lot more, but this is the first ones. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 120, 121, 144. Again, these numbers are commonly called perfect squares. They're commonly called perfect squares. And the thing about perfect squares is we can actually take the square root of them. So this leads us into the square root. This symbol here is referred to as the square root symbol. There's actually a little 2 here, but it's so common it wore off after a while. There's no longer a 2 there. It's understood that there's a 2 there. So here's how this kind of plays out. We know that 2 squared is 4. And remember, if we go the opposite direction, there's a reverse operation, which is the square root. So 2 squared is 4 because the square root of 4 is going to get us back to the 2. Same way here. 3 squared is 9 because if I go backwards, the square root of 9 has to be what squared that gives me 9, which is the 3. That's the root, the 3. As you heard, we sometimes use the word base or root. 4 squared is 16. If we go the other direction, the reverse operation is the square root of 16 has to in turn be what squared is 16, which is a 4. So to kind of summarize, if a factor occurs twice, then the number has a square root, which is the factor that occurs twice. So, for instance, the square root of 25 is a perfect square because it has 2 factors multiplied together, the same factor. It occurs twice, and since that happens, the square root of this is just that factor 1 time. No longer in the square root is no longer done, it's an action. We take it out. So square root of 36, notice 36 is the factor of 6 twice. 6 times 6 is 36. Since it's 2 factors, it has a square root, and that square root is that factor itself. So the answer is 6. And this also works with letters. A squared is a perfect square because a squared is made up of a times a. So the answer is just that factor 1 time, that a. So there's a nice brief introduction into what a square root is. And next lesson we'll work a little bit more with simplifying square roots. Stay tuned for that.